So, I missed a week, but that's okay. Toqger and Gaim went on hiatus for weeks, so doing this will just catch me up. We're talking about 2 episodes of Garo, as that wasn't on the skip schedule. As far as I understand it, last week, the Superhero Time, which is where Toqger and Gaim, it's where Super Sentai and Kamen Rider and a bunch of other shows run in the mornings, and it was preempted by golf for some reason. They did this last year too, and I'm not a big fan of golf. I think I talked about this last week, but, well, 2 weeks ago, yeah. Toqger. We're still building up to the premiere of Toku 6. In that, at the end of the episode, the Henshin device for said 6th Ranger was delivered. Otherwise, it was just wrap-up from episode 15 concerning Hammer Shadow. Schwartz enacted a plan to turn one of the Shadow Line's trains into a dream maker, pretty much enhancing it with Hammer Shadow's dream manifestation powers to then entrance a lot of kids and then destroy the dreams and make the shadows form en masse for his own plans. Now, it gets stupid as, well, it's going back to that whole, they're citing it as delusion and not imagination, in that the creative team keeps confusing what is imagination, who has it, and what is delusion and who has it. Now, the thing is, adults have imagination. It's kind of the root of creativity, and the show keeps going off of the thing that, oh, that's nice, dear, you think you're flying a plane, and when they're really just, no. You see, manifesting it in reality, that's when it becomes the delusion. And to imagine it is, oh, I'm doing this and you're picturing it in your head. That's imagination. Sure. But bringing it into the real world, that's when you become a Kiba Ranger. I really think this show was trying to bank off a lot of things in making it the kid-friendly version of a Kiba Ranger, but Kiba Ranger was not kid-friendly because it acknowledged that all this Sentai stuff was fake. In other words, it was breaking the illusion of the suspension of disbelief, specifically for the premise of the show. That it had more adult humor in it. I like a Kiba Ranger, but it got stupid at times, but that was part of its charm because these people were what you would call your average Sentai. That was the entire point. Now, they're playing it straight. And then you can't cite the stupidity. You can't avoid it being called out as stupid and nonsensical because that was what endeared people to a Kiba Ranger. And like I said, if you're playing it straight, it doesn't work. Reason I'm going through that spiel again is when they steal the kids who can see the shadow trains. One of the kids' older sister, who's responsible for her, likely because of parents' absence syndrome. I know it's a trope I'm getting wrong, but yeah, MIA parents, the sibling has to take care of the younger of the pair, and I hate that trope. It's gotten so overused, and so the big sister can't see the trains, either Shadow Line or the Rainbow Line, and yet can see the Toqger and then getting taken. So when the Toqger are about to jump on the train, the big sister, named Aoi, grabs one of the Toqger because she thinks they're suspicious, and they jump on. Now, the suspicious thing bugs me because this is a universe which is regularly protected by rainbow-colored spandex wearers. Yeah, when you view it from the expanded universe perspective, it doesn't make sense. Because people in rainbow-colored spandex, oh, they're a Sentai team. Yeah, that's kind of my complaint there, because she thinks they're suspicious, she thinks they're stealing the kids, and it's a plot contrivance. I think that irritates me more than a lot of other things, and it really shouldn't, but yeah. Because apparently just knocking into Tokati and Kagura as they're jumping on the train knocks them out. And the entire point of Dream Shadow was to use imagination against the wielders. So, since they were unconscious when they boarded the train that is manipulating imagination, they weren't affected by it. Guess who were? Right, Miyu and Hikari. In fact, they don't even respond to the others when they show up, and it's so they can eat to their heart's content. Have I mentioned I hate this team? I mean, the only reason the other two weren't caught in this event was because of a sixth person coming in out of nowhere to pretty much preempt their normal stupidity. I don't like stupid protagonists. And yet, that's what I keep getting with this show. Really, the only reason the Shadow Line hasn't won is more and more absurd luck. And that's not what should be happening. Anyways, the train is filled with Dream Park, restaurant, water park, space museum. Pretty staple stuff. And of course, then after Tokati and Kagura are ejected, Schwartz springs the trap. And overflows the entire train with darkness. And then there's where the stupid, insulting, adults don't have imagination things comes in that they get Aoi to reawaken her imagination by pretending to fly a plane as she goes down a slide. And then she can shoot the Reshas and board with Kagura to save her brother. And yeah. I am so hating this series because its good moments are damn good, but then you get this kind of thing all the freaking time that's just insulting to its audience, and there are a lot of people that there are a lot of adults that watch Sentai. Not just like me in another country that appreciates the medium. Adults in Japan watch Sentai. Adults in a lot of countries watch Sentai, and it's frustrating because, well, we can take a lot of stupid. It's part of suspension of disbelief. Hell, most mainstream movies are really, really stupid these days. But they're not outright insulting to their demographic. Yeah, it's mainly directed at younger audiences, but when you have a larger, when you have people all over the world of all age groups that appreciate something, you can't really go about doing that and expect people to not complain or nitpick or criticize. You get people like me. Anyways, on to Gaim. This was a big one in a lot of ways, following on from the big reveal of Kiwami arms, in that we learn the worldwide Realma's a dick. So after abandoning Yggdrasil, well, not so much abandoning Yggdrasil, abandoning the forces at the choke points of the Helheim Forest, and we see some of the higher-ups of Yggdrasil. Now, I've said previously that I thought that Foundation X might be funding Yggdrasil, because that would make sense in the greater multiverse not multiverse, greater continuity of Kamen Rider. In that Foundation X has showed up in double O's and fours, and is implied to have backed Wise Man for a stretch. And this would have been a good moment to tie back that into it with the prototype stuff we saw a few episodes ago with Ryoma's prototype drivers for harnessing the lock seeds, where we saw that they'd gotten research elements from the last 5 or 6 riders, Kiva through Wizard, in their special abilities. They've gotten data on them. And that works because of the Die Shocker elements that first had to do the research to create the Deca driver in that greater universe, and then we got the other 4 or 5 there, that from the Neo Heisei riders, and that was a good thing. Would have been a good moment to tie continuity, even though Gaim's kind of doing its own thing lately. And what Ryoma did was out the Project Arc scandal. In other words, he did what Mai was trying to do a few episodes ago, which Michi stopped her from doing. Yeah, he's definitely been playing for the wrong side, and continues to be. This, and since Yggdrasil was uber powerful for some reason, a lot of people worldwide were backing it, and when that went public, what's the term? People resigned from their jobs in the government, and apparently Yggdrasil had this quarantine plan in that they would deal with everything in Zawame, and the JSDF would just guard the borders to keep it contained. This plan doesn't work in the event that Yggdrasil is compromised. And Yggdrasil is compromised. So, literally, no one knows what they're doing, stock market's collapsing, governments are changing hands in all this chaos and rioting, and what should I say? No one's paying attention that the world is being invaded. Because the blackouts instigated by Yggdrasil is still in effect over Zawame, so no one knows there's an active invasion. It's all politicking. In hindsight, yeah, that's another Urobuchi bomb. He is very good at those. In that, they've said in previous episodes, this is what will happen if this stuff gets made public. And which will only stop people from solving things. And now the villains, guess what they did? They dropped the bomb and stopped people from fixing things. Oh, I love Urobuchi's writing, and I hate it that it makes me give the feels. So the beat writers have to step up and clear out everything from Zawame. We get another moment with Akira being an idiot. Akira, if you don't remember, is Kota's sister, and she's been pretty much dead weight most of the series because her perceptions of what's going on get her and others into more trouble. I have not liked her throughout the series, and now she's on the lam from monster attacks, while Kota and everybody else are trying to get people evacuated. She is so reliant. She so much believes in the system. She is a proponent for the system that doesn't work for a lot of people and has now outright failed. And I'm just getting a bit of vindication on that, considering some of her actions in the past. And we also get some good moments with Kaito. Now, Kaito's a dick. It's undeniable, but he has good motives for doing it. He has a sane head on his shoulders, despite, being the power-obsessed guy. He's rallied and organized. He's a good I shouldn't say good, he's a charismatic leader in that he knows what he needs to do to move forward, I should say. And that's something that Kota's been struggling with, as he's, I want to say, a gentler person, but that's not exactly right. He's a person that doesn't like to get into fights, but will when he has to. Whereas Kaito's all kind of antagonistic because that's kind of what the world has made him. But he's created this following that he's right for the wrong reasons. I think that's what I'm getting at. So while Kota doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. Kaito doesn't know what he wants to do, but when he does, will throw everything into it. And it's a dichotomy here where the dichotomy is Kota's drifting through life. Kaito doesn't know what he wants to do, but in the meantime is making a name for himself, and Michi wants to control. In fact, in this episode he says, "The only friends I have are the ones that do what I say," meaning that any friendship we've seen from him in the past is just they were doing what he wanted to with what he wanted to. That's why they were important to him. And yeah, the Mai slap from 25 is not so much looking like a breaking point. It's more like a epiphany that none of these people are doing what I want, so screw them. I'm going to destroy everything, starting with what I believe was the starting element to this, which is, of course, Kota, which is, of course, wrong because he can't see beyond his own nose. Anyways, yeah, they start defending the city from invest attacks, and oh yes, Michi. Michi is officially in collusion with Redyu, the Green Overlord Invest, because Redyu wants to rule the world. Except he doesn't. He wants a toy to play with. He wants to be the person in charge, but then have the freedom to play with everything. I believe the Doctor Who clip of "You don't want to take over the world, you wouldn't know what to do with it, beyond shout at it." And Linkara, from atop the fourth wall, has played with this trope with the mad scientist Dr. Link Sano, in that he just wants something to play with, something to do, something to dominate, and he's willing to having it is enough for him. Except it's not, because that's not how this works. He would be willing to let Michi run it, because that's his thing, that's his whole deal, absolute control, if they were to collude, because Redyu has this plan to get the forbidden fruit from Roshuo. And Roshuo believes the forbidden fruit will revive his loved one, and they're going to be working to revive the queen. I believe we don't know her name yet. And that'll either be a trade, or a bargain, or blackmail, or something for the fruit. And I know this because this is how this development works. This is so obvious. And, well, Michi already found the hook to how to get Redyu to do what he wants. And that is remove obstacles in your path. And thus he gets the army to fight Kota. In fact, a new overlord, which is destroyed the same episode because he didn't know about Kiwami. And now he does. Also, Oren is awesome in this episode, as when Michi is there fighting the Zangetsu, Kota still thinks Zangetsu is Takatora. He doesn't know about the belt swap, and this could have really helped them. Yoko she is allied with the beat writers. Since she was betrayed, she has no reason to stay loyal to Yggdrasil. This is what I went over a couple weeks ago with her. She is not that... she's not a zealot. She's just interested in seeing the end of things. She wants to see the heights of people with charismatic personalities. It's why she was with Ryoma. She thought he had the potential to take this fruits and become a force, and she wanted to support him in that. Now she found out she was wrong, and she's doing it all over again. I think she has she has a thing for powerful men. I mean, that sounds like something sexist, but it's consistent with her character in that she's been thrilled by these exchanges and fights. We've seen that with her and her fights with Kota in the past, except she's not, for lack of a better term, crushing on Kota because of what I just went over. He lacks this resolve, this determination, this intent of what he wants to do with everything. Aside from protect. After you win, what do you do? And she seems to see that in Kaito and not in Kota, which, yeah, I can see that. I don't exactly like it as much, as it's a bit of the character weakening I was hoping was not going to happen with her, but give and take. At least we get a bit more character out of her. And she's still the most she can still kick everyone's ass out of the suits, and that got a lot of credit from me. So yeah, Orin reveals to Kota that Takatora is not in the Zangetsu suit because Michi fights in a completely different way than Takatora. To him, there's no elegance in it, which makes sense to me, as Michi sucks in a fight. I mean, we've known this since he first went Ryugen, because Ryugen's a distance fighter, and he goes close in with distance attacks. And, oh, don't even get me started on the oversized chakrams that really should not be used. And I know they're actually a thing, it's just that how do you fight with something like that? It's not like foldable battle fans with a razor edge, which you can fold up to you for defensive strikes, and they're a bit more scaled with them. They're ridiculously oversized. They're wider than his body. And he actually never used that much. So yeah, he sucks at fighting. He's probably the weakest of the energy riders simply by his whole deal. And Kiwami, even when Michi's fighting with an Overlord, just wrecks the both of them. In fact, the only reason he survives at all this time is because he saw Kota put the Ichigo Lock Seed into the DJ gun. And he remembers what Ichigo Arms does, in that its charge attack creates a swarm of energy blasts that just strike at once. In Ichigo Arms, it was in the form of kunai. In this one, it was a charged fruit stabbing blast thing. Yeah, I lost track of my sentence there. But yeah, it was cool to see that Kiwami was combining the lock seed effects instead of just going for all the squash Oliat sparkling moves. Oh, and he can summon 2 weapons at a time. 2 of the same weapons at a time. This is really awesome to me. So yeah, there's going to be expected fallout from this next episode or so when they finally figure out who the false Zangetsu is, hopefully very soon. As, from previews we saw Roshuo and Takatora are coming to Earth. Good. Also, good news on that front, it's confirmed that Gaim is going to be running for 46 episodes. Now, people were panicking a while back because we learned it was going to be running shorter than we expected, than the standard season. And that was mainly because of how long Wizard ran last year. So 46 is not bad. We were expecting 39 from early reports from some of the cast. It's just that we found out that one of the actors is not making it past episode 39. So for him, it was true. His involvement in the series was half over when he reported that around episode 17, 18, 20. But if we're going to 46, it still makes it a bit shorter than normal for a writer series, but overall not that bad. Only like 1 or 2 shorter than the average. I mean, the longest series was 98, then 54. The shortest series was 24, 5, 6 episodes. So, oh, and then there's Decade with 31 and X with 35. So it's not that bad. It's definitely on the shorter range, but with how well written the story is, I don't think extending it a few episodes would have mattered that much. On to Garo. We're double dosing on Garo this week in 10 and 11, but 10 was kind of filler. It was good use filler, but there wasn't much to talk about it concerning it. Raiga and Mayuri go to track down a horror that hasn't fully emerged, and since they're going to be gone for days at a time hunting this thing, Raiga decides to give Gonza the day off. Now, Gonza is the butler/manservant that's lasted since the first series. I'm getting to the first series. And he hasn't had a day off in a while, so he goes to meet up with a former Makai priest named Anna, and they spend the day together. I think not exactly date-ish, but there seems to be some kind of romantic overtone because they know each other. And it's essentially about how Gonza's been trying to get Mayuri to smile or appreciate his efforts and works, and he's kind of been failing at it, and it ties into this soup that he makes special for the Saejima family, and how it's not, well, it's brilliant to him, it's not the specialness of what will get it, and what will catch attention. And the guy's been a butler and surrogate father for, at this point, over 40 years, 50 years, since the original show. And, you know, I hate to call a comparison to Alfred from Batman, because Garo is not like Batman at all, but it seems like when your job is all you are, you become obsessed with this perfectionist streak, getting people to smile, making people appreciate your works, and because Mayuri is a mystic tool that looks human, and they're trying to get her to appreciate humanity, unlock her lost humanity, at least to them, it appears to be lost humanity, and he's failing in the ways he can be involved with her, and he kind of has a bit of a breakdown until Anna, who is as I said, is a former Makai priest, so she's in the know, kind of gives him some advice about do what you can, and he gets some help in that he realizes that Mayuri is more visual than other sensory. In that, at the beginning of the episode, she was entranced by this Makai painting of moving characters in CGI, because this show likes CGI, and so has Anna paint a glyph on the bottom of a dish so that it strengthens the sensory connection so she can appreciate his food. And I liked that a bit, in that it's visually told. Admittedly, there's not a lot to it when you deconstruct it, but that's Garo. It's visual storytelling for the sake of the story. The visual works support the story they're trying to tell. There's less story as a consequence, but it doesn't feel bogged, weighted down, or padded out. Garo 11, on the other hand, is more like... I gushed over one of the early episodes called Movie, in that it was paying tribute to American horror movies, and I went gaga over it because of the tongue-in-cheek humor of it. This one is pretty much the same, in that it focused on manga artists and writers, and one of them being possessed by a horror after one of his assistants quits so he can make his own manga and degrades the work of his senior. And yeah, horror possession. The brilliant thing about it is how they did the effects. They turned them into drawings and then had the guy eat them. And I think I saw a bit of a parodies in there, because the guy, after he becomes possessed and takes the talent of others, his artwork for his new manga called Makai King, Demon King, it looks like Scried. It looks like Scried. Scried is one of my favorite anime and manga, and it looked so much like Kazuma the Shell Bullet in the armor styling of it, and it was also parodying a bit of what's popular, in that one of the popular rival manga artists, one was a guy that was drawing magical girl stuff, and that was apparently the #1 thing. And I think that's a bit tying into the Madoka Magica thing that's still going on, because Gen Urobuchi is still a big name, and also the Sailor Moon revival, because, yeah. So that was conveniently good timing for kind of that joke at it. And I guess it looked a bit more into how things are done in Japan as compared to comic books in the US, because there's a higher turnover in stories for... I'm about to time out, so I'll pause this. There's a higher turnover in Japan of completed stories than in America, where most tales are continuously ongoing. I mean, Superman's been running consistently since the 30s, same with Batman and a lot of other big names that have consistently had comics for decades. And Japan, it's rarer to have a manga series that lasts more than 10 years. And of course, we have the big three names of Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece that fit there. There's also JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Guyver's been running since the 80s, except that's like one chapter of that a month. Less than. Author existence failure. I am so worried about that. And it is still rare, but it's not the standard. I mean, my favorite manga series, the only one I have a complete copy of, is Rurouni Kenshin. That's 30 volumes. It ended. Superman has over 1,000 issues. More than. That's just the main line series. If you include all the other books he stars in, it's thousands and thousands of comics. And trying to think of what I'm trying to say correctly, and it's just big in how different things are treated that I liked seeing, especially with all the comic book controversies the last few years with like the New 52 and the Spider-Man events and the overpopulation of event comics and these crossovers with these shared continuities. And I'm failing to put into words what I want to say. I liked being able to see this behind-the-scenes stuff, in that it's probably still a parody of what's actually being done, but I think it's another good way of showing how the horrors prey on people in their weakest, darkest moment to possess them, and then using that to fuel their own, not motivations, they use it to their own gain, to get their powers, because I've seen the non-possessed horrors, they're kind of blank, not blank, just blanking on the term I want to use. I hate it when that happens. The ones who host horrors are more likely to have these exotic abilities based on what drives them to them, versus the mooks, standard, can't think of the term. Anyways, yeah, it concludes with something straight out of Akiba Ranger, in that the horror uses sound effects to to start off the fight with Raiga, in that he creates boom, boom, and word balloons, and then just throws them at him. And that is so breaking the fourth wall, it's hilarious, and then large sound effect falls straight on him, like something out of cartoons, and the green screen integration was brilliant for these, as after that there's all a bunch of drawings of enemies that Raiga has to cut down, and you could barely tell it was done against a green screen, or, overlay effects. It was that well acted. And then the horror writes a manga of how he'll destroy the Golden Knight, and Raiga has to think on his feet to destroy the manga, because as long as the manga pages exist, they're going to keep coming true. So he gets, from an incident earlier, he gets ink on his sword and swipes it at the manga so that the part with the ending to it is blacked out, and so he can rewrite the ending and kill it. Very good episode. I should be back for normal next week. I was just really overworked and working on stuff last week. I couldn't waste a couple hours to do this, but I should be back for normal. So, next week we should finally be getting Toku 6. Oh, and I'm looking forward to the Gaim. So much Gaim. Dude, do you even Gaim? Yes. Later.